Welcome everyone to the captive audience. Sorry we're starting a little bit late here. I just came back from a rain-swept, windy 3.11 mile walk and just to get that exercise so that I could stay perky and keep my girlish figure. But now I'm glad to be here with you guys, and I've got so much to bring you here today. It is the 17th of December in the year of our Lord 2024. And uh, first off tonight, I just wanted to lead off with sort of touching upon the drone issue from last night. I tell you, the more this goes on, the more concerned I get because I have to say that it's pretty obvious. One thing is extremely obvious: the government knows what this is. Unless they think they can tell a lie and tell everybody that it's not a threat and they have no idea what it is. So those two things cannot both be true. Therefore, it's either a huge lie or more realistically, they know what the drones are. And just how stupid does the administration think all of us are? Um, if Biden tells us not to worry about drones that they say they know nothing about, that's an idiotic request to the American people. And it's just one of many idiotic statements they've made and decisions they've promulgated. And I think we're going to find as we move forward that there's actually reasons why they were this awful and stupid all at the same time. Uh, uh, there are definitely going to be things coming out about this. And I think right now, Biden and the Democrats that are running the country right now are just hoping that it can all come out after they've left office and maybe shredded all the evidence. That's all I can think of. Because right now, the stories I'm hearing uh, for this range from uh, they could be looking for nuclear materials. I mean, seriously, that's really of a lot of concern if that's true. Another gentleman who runs a drone company, that is the CEO of a drone company. They make drones that they distribute to the military in part, said that he believes um, that they're looking for a loose nuke that somebody that he talked to actually witnessed and saw. So that's deeply concerning. There is actually a clear-cut case of missing radioactive material in New Jersey. It's medical radioactive waste, not the most severe kind, but this again could be the government looking for something as opposed to, and if it's so bad that they can't tell us what that is, then that's bad. I'm posting some of the links to this. I hope that one link actually works because it didn't hyperlink on me here. But and a sheriff in a New Jersey county actually sent up his own drone to follow one of these mysterious drones that's flying around, and he's the one who saw like dozens of these things coming in from off the coast into his county. He witnessed it himself, and then sent this drone up to go and try and approach one of the drones that was up there, and it swiftly and rapidly evaded his drone very easily. So this is where somebody's actually running these things who apparently might know what they're doing too. So I think it's time that we get some truth out of these guys. They're going to have to tell the truth at some point. You know that Trump's going Trump's going to make the truth known, and they're all going to be with long faces and sad when they get exposed. But you know what? Maybe that's how they want it. Maybe they want to look as bad as possible. Anyway, that's sort of the highlights of that drone issue. We'll come back and keep revisiting it. Meanwhile, speaking of the truth, it looks like the House Republicans have put in a referral to the Department of Justice, which they hope is taken up by the Trump Department of Justice here, that concludes that the January 6th attack was preventable, and that it highlights intelligence and security failures, which they are saying this referral is regarding former Republican member of Congress Liz Cheney, who they say there's evidence that she tampered with a January 6th witness to cover up these intelligence and security failures, to rig what was supposed to be an investigatory committee and turn it into one where they targeted Trump and other Republicans. And actually, they made referrals before they left office. And instead, maybe the tables will be turned here. Representative Barry Loudermilk is the one who did this. He's the chairman of the House Administration Oversight Subcommittee. And they issued their interim report and said, look, looks like some federal laws, numerous federal laws, were broken by Liz Cheney, who was the vice chair of that select committee, and that these should be investigated. And you know what? There was a time I thought more highly of her, but if she did this, and if she did tamper with a witness and evidence, they say here it likely violates 18 U.S.C. 1512, which is not protected by the speech and debate clause because it was interfering with the due functioning of the legislative process. So you can read the full report if you like as well. This article lists the details that I just shared. It also says that she probably violated 18 U.S.C. 1622, which prohibits any person from procuring another person to commit perjury. And so if she did encourage somebody to perjure themselves, then there's going to be a lot of people, including Liz Cheney, that might experience some negative consequences for that. And here's a link to the full report, which you can go read. And so this really is an opportunity to set that record straight, to show that there was a political operation involved with this. And as we know, just the other day, the Inspector General at the FBI revealed that there were, in fact, I think it was 24 confidential paid sources in the crowd. And they named how many of each of those paid sources entered the restricted area in the Capitol, and how many then went on to actually enter the Capitol as part of what occurred on January 6th. And that's in addition to the fact that, as we know, Nancy Pelosi admitted on videotape that they screwed up and they should have secured the Capitol, and they did not. And as we know also, as brought forward to the committee by Kash Patel, the FBI director nominee from President Trump, there's pure, straightforward, direct evidence that, in fact, there was an effort, pure and simple, to actually make sure that, let me see, sorry, I got a little distracted by something here, to provide National Guard coverage. And that National Guard coverage should have been there, actually. Anyway, and by the way, if some of you are just joining on Facebook, I apologize. It looks like for some reason it just didn't start streaming to Facebook when it was supposed to when I started the show. So you can go back and you can watch this on YouTube and on X in its entirety, which I covered some very interesting topics before we got into this January 6th topic and the Liz Cheney referral. Here's something that, there's some kind of weird news websites that every once in a while have something useful, and this one is pretty useful. A White House advisor made a stunning statement about Biden, President Biden. It's a White House National Security Council advisor was caught on, I guess, an undercover recording by James O'Keefe's O'Keefe Media Group. It's an advisor Henry Appel, Appel, of the National Security Council's Intelligence Program Directorate, opens up to this undercover person about Biden's communication and comprehension issues. This guy revealed that the president's actually incapable of understanding basic concepts or finishing phrases. And this was given to an undercover reporter. And this has, of course, happened as Biden has come under increasing scrutiny after losing the presidency to Donald Trump in the re-election race. I mean, he lost to Donald Trump in the debate and then lost the nomination to Kamala Harris and then effectively lost the presidency as a result of all of that. Well, I think they're going to find out that this is one of the most severe cover-ups, one of the biggest scandals in U.S. history, which is how they hid the dysfunction and the incompetence and the true health circumstances of Joe Biden. And I hope it results in some reforms that make it impossible for this to happen again. But I don't know. I think that we've crossed the Rubicon on this one. Joe Biden is a clear and present danger in his current state if something really severe happens on the international stage. And right now, I look at that drone thing and just say, yeah, what a freaking disaster that's turning into, both PR and as well as national security. And we don't even know what it is at this point because they won't tell us. So meanwhile, the Biden administration, as it's leaving, so we know it's not Biden, but it's his administration, is threatening Elon Musk with some charges. They say that the CEO of SpaceX and Tesla if he does not comply with a financial demand, the departing Security and Exchange Commission Chairman Gary Gensler has threatened to file charges against him. And Elon Musk shared this on X saying, "Oh, Gary, how could you do this to me?" And shared a document indicating that he may be charged with crimes related to his 2022 acquisition of Twitter, now known as X. According to the letter sent to Gensler by Alex Spiro, Musk's lawyer, the ex-CEO was told that he needed to agree within 48 hours to either accept a monetary payment or face charges on numerous counts. The demand relates to certain purchases, sales, and disclosures of Twitter shares, according to the lawyer, who also claimed that the commission has been harassing Musk for more than, quote, 6 years, unquote. And you can read the full article on this. It's something called Republic Brief. So let me post that here for you. It's just crazy. It's stunning that this is happening. By the way, that it's also a Republic Brief that you can read more about Joe Biden. And it's funny because the title of this article is like stunning statement about Biden's death, is what they said here. Apple's unintentional remarks to an undercover reporter came as Biden was under increased scrutiny. Quote, Joe Biden is like dead, not literally. Like he can't say a sentence. And Apple remembered an instance in which Biden asked his aides if the term novel phenomena referred to a book. Seemingly perplexed by it, quote, my boss said it, and Biden was just like, what do you mean, like a book? According to Apple's recounting, the president had trouble understanding the word's usual meaning. This is something that's common when you get into Alzheimer's. You start asking questions that are matter-of-fact questions that everybody knows the answer to. or knows how to get the answer, or they're obvious, and just depicts a state of confusion. So the person in charge of thousands of nuclear weapons and our security just doesn't understand the words nominal phenomena and can't understand or complete sentences. And he said, I picked up the phone and said, hello, Mr. President. And he asked for Jake Sullivan. And after a brief exchange, Biden called me back 10 seconds later and asked, is Jake there? And Apple said, I told him, no, he's traveling with you. He's on the same trip you are. So Biden also got confused where Jake Sullivan was, and Jake Sullivan was with him. And when Apple disclosed the emotional state of White House workers after Trump's re-election in 2024, the discussion took an even more shocking turn. He acknowledged concerns about how the new Trump administration could examine their activities and characterized his staff as, quote, trauma bonded, unquote. We have a trauma bond, Apple acknowledged. There are a lot of tears. I need to find a new job. Boo hoo. We are a little worried about the Trump administration pursuing us as well. And so this is worth taking a look at. By the way, you can also go into X and you can see the video. So here's a link to the video, which I have not had a chance to watch yet, but you know, it seems like these guys, they know the truth. So we're going to find it, and we're going to start with guys like that. By the way, Biden kind of fell for a legal trap set by some Trump appointees 4 years ago. There are a lot of committees and commissions and boards and bureaus to which the president gets to appoint people. And when they're appointed by the president, sometimes they also have to be approved by the Senate for some of these positions. And Joe Biden, after President Trump had appointed two people, Sean Spicer, which used to be the White House press secretary, and then has had a position with Newsmax on, sorry, I got a little itch in the eye, on Newsmax, with a show on Newsmax, Spicer and Company. And then also the former Office of Management and Budget Director, Russell Vought, Biden sought to block their, or those guys sought to block their removal from the U.S. Naval Academy's Board of Visitors in 2021, which is a pretty innocuous board. But Biden was just going, and he wanted to just clear house and get rid of everybody, even though there had been a tradition in the past of allowing those people to serve on these boards, despite the fact that they were appointed by the previous administration. So Joe Biden went and fought this lawsuit brought by Spicer and Vought, and contesting these guys are contesting the legality of their firings. Biden won in court, and it paved the way for President-elect Donald Trump to wield the executive power that Democrats will wish that he didn't have. One example of this is that very recently, the Senate Judiciary Committee approved the Senate approved David Houtema to a 5-year term as the head of the Office of Government Ethics. In October, Biden appointed 4 new members to the Commission on Reform and Modernization of the State Department, stuff that he has no business doing anyway, and 8 new members to the National Sciences Board, 1 to the National Cancer Advisory Board. It's very likely, because of the legal precedent that Biden set, that Trump will just fire all these people. And of course, there's going to be a lot of firings, but he might start with these guys. And this is, of course, part of Biden's effort to Trump-proof the federal government. They've already done some things like signed agreements with public employee unions to make it more difficult to fire employees under certain circumstances, which are ones likely to come up, particularly with regard to being required to go back to the office in person, because as we know, there's many that are not that are refusing to do it. And then, of course, there were questions a few weeks ago about whether President Trump would have the authority to fire Christopher Wray, the FBI director, who was nominated and approved to what is considered a 5-year term. However, which would mean he'd be the FBI director until 2027 and that Trump couldn't replace him. However, Christopher Wray has already announced that he is going to resign or is resigning, which would clear the way for Kash Patel anyway. And if you're asked to resign, most of these guys actually do. However, if they had decided to fight it, they might have found that this legal precedent would have undermined that entire set of circumstances. So I think this is a moment of justice, a very fortunate moment of justice, poetic justice, and we'll see how it plays out. But I just posted a link to that article. It's really good. Some good news today. President Trump has officially secured enough electoral college votes to clinch the presidency. By the time they got to Texas in tallying the votes, because that was done today in all of the state capitals around the country, is that the electors actually physically go to the state capitol and cast their votes, which are then transmitted to the United States Capitol and counted on January 6th after the new Congress is sworn in to session. And Harris and Biden have said they will not contest the results of this election, which would be hard to do, of course, since it was a pretty decisive one. But they will finish off tallying all of these today, or did, and out of 538 electors, Trump won 312 and Harris won 226. 270 were needed to secure the presidency. And of course, I should mention too that in addition to this, on the very same day that this was happening, Senator Dick Dirtbag, that's my personal name for him, him and a bunch of Senate Democrats actually came out with a proposal of a constitutional amendment to abolish the Electoral College and replace it with a direct popular vote. And I want to encourage everyone to invest the time, not only themselves in learning again why we have an Electoral College, but in learning the wisdom of this for our modern day. Because what these guys do, what the Senator Dick Dirtbag and company did, is they just said that your vote for president that you cast shouldn't count more if you're from one state versus another, which is ironic considering the fact that this guy is actually a member of a body whose members are 2 per state. In other words, his vote doesn't count. Somebody who elects him to the U.S. Senate, they count for less on an individual basis when they cast those votes for him than a U.S. senator from Wyoming, because they only get 2 senators per state. In fact, that's fundamentally why the Electoral College is weighed the way it is, to give an enhanced representation to smaller states, is because it's actually it's composed of the House of Representatives, for which there's 1 for every 750,000 citizens. And then the Electoral College then adds 2 senators per state. So therefore, the minimum any state can have is 3, which means that, it skews it towards the smaller states. But there's so many different reasons why this is so relevant. In fact, it's perhaps more relevant now than it has been in the past. I don't know about Raskin's threat, Lori, but Raskin actually is facing a challenge for his own committee seat. So I think he can go ahead and be an election denier if he wants to be, but it's just not going to stop progress towards the new administration. But Democrats are trying to make a case today that we don't need the electoral college, that it's a bad thing. And I think we have to start doing a better job of making sure that people understand that there actually really is a good reason why we have an electoral college, that it's absolutely essential. And that if it weren't for the electoral college, I just want to say that I think it's very, very likely that you would see the country break up eventually, because it would change how people campaign. They would simply go and campaign in 14 large metro areas, do whatever they could to appeal to those voters, have those voters run up the score and outvote 20 other states. And then everything will be at the federal level done by the president to the liking of the large populous states, particularly the ones on the coasts. And they will rule over all the small states like they're small vassal states, like colonies. And we can see how this works in Oregon on a smaller scale, because this unfortunate system actually does exist, where 6 counties, and particularly the metro areas within them in Oregon, pretty much represent 60% of the vote. And they decide what happens in the state of Oregon. So the other 40% get almost no representation, and they get crapped on all the time. And the result has been that I think as of now, isn't the tally about 13 or 14 counties have actually voted for the idea of leaving the state of Oregon and joining Idaho, Greater Idaho. And when 1/3 of the counties in your state want a divorce, maybe you're not doing a very good job, and you don't have a system that's actually representative. And there used to be a more representative system that they got rid of here in Oregon, in which the state Senate had the same number of representatives per county. So you had 36 counties, and that kind of acted as that counterweight, right? Well, we don't have anything like that in Oregon right now, but we do have something that helps us make sure that we can preserve the unity of the union and not have it break up, and not have smaller states fear being dominated and ruled over by larger states. And this is as true as today as it was when the country was founded, when about 3/4 of the states are very concerned that they would be dominated by New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Massachusetts. And then the rest of the states would just have to do whatever those states told them to do. And they just left being dominated by an empire of Great Britain. And they're like, well, let's not reproduce that. It decentralizes power is what it does. And it means that you do have a popular vote, but you have 50 state popular votes. And that results in us being able to have a system that has survived to this point for nearly 240 years. Let me see if I've got that right. Well, it's survived in an unprecedented fashion for such a large republic in world history. And I think this is why we need to make sure we engage in learning about history and doing everything we can to relish what that means. Now, I will tell you that Hillsdale College has a very good program that they're doing right now that I want to share with you about electoral college. And I just received an email about it, and they actually explain the electoral college and why we have it. I recommend that everybody take a look at this. They actually have like a whole section on this that has podcasts that discuss the purpose behind it. They give you an opportunity to gain more knowledge on this and to explain it to others. So I'm going to post this here because I think it's very important that we take the time to educate ourselves, because you know what? We're all communicators. We are all the mouthpieces of our republic. We can't leave it up to elites to do all this for us. And if we do, we may find ourselves with people like Senator Dick Dirtbag making these decisions for us, much to our chagrin. Because, like I said, it's ironic that a guy who's a member of a body, the Senate, which has equal representation per state, doesn't like the Electoral College. Of course, he's from Illinois, so what do you expect? Let's shift a little bit and come to some more state level stuff, which I wanted to share with you. So very recently, Governor Kotek did an interview with the left, heavily left-leaning Oregon Capital Chronicle. And she says that the state needs to keep focusing on housing, education, and mental health. There's not a lot of evidence that they've been focusing on this, unless you just take the dollar signs, the money they throw at it. But there's not a lot of evidence that they've made progress on these things. And I would cite as evidence yesterday's report that Oregon overdose deaths are on the rise, even though the national rates are declining for overdoses. And we know this is all connected to drug addiction and overdose. And so I would challenge Tina Kotek to offer proof beyond dollar signs that they're actually focusing on these issues. I also like how this article is written, and I'm saying it in a facetious manner. It's written as if you could actually, that someone was actually thinking on focusing on something else after they campaigned on this. The article really doesn't do a lot to hold her responsible for the results. And it does acknowledge that some lawmakers differ on what the focus should be and bring some of that out. But having said that, if you campaign on something like this, you spend a bunch of money doing it, and you don't have results to show for it, maybe they should get rid of you in leadership. And I think Kate, I almost said Kate Brown, except Tina Kotek seems to be a slight bit smarter than Kate Brown. But also, she's not showing a lot more success so far. It's just a lot of money. They're good at spending money. I think you'll find they're good at raising taxes now that they have a supermajority, but they're not good at solving anything. And we have more things that they're throwing money at. Here's another one. So there was a special session called to get the state to pony up the money to pay the contractors who fought the wildfires this last season. And it was a historic wildfire season. A record was set for the number of acres burned. I think it was more than 2 million when it was all said and done. And that's huge. When you consider that the 4th congressional district has 2.3 million acres of forest land in it, and 2 million statewide actually burned. Now that include a lot of prairie land, but that also has a severe negative impact economically on the state and contributes, of course, to pollution. So I think this is, but they've come forward with about $200 million for the Oregon Department of Forestry and $26 million for the fire marshal's office. They owe $98 million to vendors for fires that had to be fought last year. And now this will go to pay them and to get these agencies back on solid financial ground. It's amazing to me that they needed, that they couldn't anticipate making sure that these entities were on solid financial ground. They praise all the firefighters, but, and they say it was all hands on deck to protect life, land, and property. But now they're getting around to making sure they can pay the bill and also stabilize these entities so they're able to continue the work they're supposed to be doing. She's got a budget for the next 2-year cycle that recommends $130 million additional in new revenue to modernize and fully fund wildfire and mitigation programs, which, they're almost never willing to do that. They're always willing to pay for the pound of cure instead of the ounce of prevention. She also wants to put 150 million into reserves instead of having those go into the cost of fighting wildfires. She's putting that in her next budget. And so, they're always a dollar late and a day late and a dollar short in actually doing anything to prevent this from constantly reoccurring. And this is pointed out by a couple of folks in the state legislature. Ed Deal put out a press release or a commentary saying that the state of Oregon has found a way to take $1 billion asset and turn it into $1 billion loss. They approved Senate Bill 5801, which allocated $218 million to the general fund to cover those costs for the wildfire season. The funding, he points out, will go to reimburse these costs, but there's been no change in the management and stewardship of the forest. The bill didn't address this at all. Everybody knows what needs to be done in terms of stewardship and management to protect and make the force even productive and self-funding. But the extremists that are running our state refuse to do that. They are happy to keep letting the forest burn and paying to fight the wildfires, but they're not willing to do anything to manage it. And they're not willing to do anything to harvest the timber that could be harvested, which would contribute to making the forest safer. So he says here that by neglecting forest management, they've led to increasing the wildfire risks and putting this financial burden on taxpayers. He said they've shut down our forests, denying Oregonians of their livelihoods and creating tinderboxes in the process. What were once prosperous, self-sufficient rural communities now beg the state and the feds to fund essential programs. Because, by the way, they used to be able to fund law enforcement and education off of this. Now these communities have become impoverished. They come hat in hand asking for money to fund the basic services, not to mention to pay for fighting the wildfires. And so this is a terrible transformation that the government has engaged in. I recommend that everybody take a look at that. So let me see if I didn't post. Let me post the story from Tina Kotek about what she said. And then here's Ed Deal's story in the Oregon Catalyst. And then lastly, Senator Daniel Bonham, the Republican leader in the Senate, urges reform of the Oregon Department of Forestry and stronger forest management. He goes into some detail about this. He says, while it is necessary to address the state's unpaid bills, this special session only treated the symptoms of a much larger problem. The real issue is decades of agency mismanagement, ineffective policies that failed to address the root causes of these devastating fires. ODF's leadership must improve its performance and take responsibility for allowing these issues to persist. Governor Kotek must also step up and use her leadership to drive the necessary reforms at the agency so we're not constantly reacting after disaster strikes. That's all we do. That's all we do. There are common sense solutions that will make our forest healthier, reduce wildfire risk while generating jobs and spurring economic activity. I know that this is a theme that I became very familiar with in the 4th District race as the communications director for Monique Spain's campaign. Monique talked about this constantly. Her opponent, Val Hoyle, actually voted against a remarkable federal bill called the Fix Our Forests Act that would have required and put into place much of the stuff from the federal level that they're talking about that they need. And Val Hoyle voted against it, coming up with some bizarre excuse that she said they needed to spend more time paying for wildland firefighters and raising their pay. Which is an entirely different thing than the structural reforms that need to happen and the reforms to the ways that they maintain our forests. And Oregonians, Senator Bonham says, deserve nothing less than shifting our attention to prevention. So this is again, we heard from from Tina Kotek what we need to focus on, and then we heard from Tina Kotek that while we need to focus on those things, we also are failing to succeed at those things. And then we've got these other things that we're failing at that we aren't focused on, apparently, because we're doing it as an afterthought. There's also a focus that needs to be brought to the business climate in the state. The NFIB Small Business Optimism Index released today rose by 8 points in November after 34 months of remaining below the 50-year average of 98. That's the highest reading since June 2021. Of the 10 components in the index, 9 increased, none decreased, and 1 remain unchanged. Optimism is up and uncertainty is down. It said it's heartening news. I think we all know why that's happening. Somebody is going to be sworn in on January 20th who's actually much, much better for small businesses and for the business climate across the whole country, the state included. Meanwhile, these findings show that there's a long way to go for people at the state level to begin to reassure businesses and workers that they can afford to continue to locate their businesses in Oregon. Have a look at that poll and its findings, but I think it speaks volumes. Lars Larson, by the way, asked a question, which I think is another important one that the state government is actually making worse and failing to address. Are you ready to live in the dark? Are you prepared to spend some of your time shivering in the dark this winter? Are you prepared for the electrical blackouts coming to the Pacific Northwest? There's a new warning that from this week's meeting of the regional government agency charged with keeping our lights on. Consultants say that computer data centers now chew up 10% of the region's power, and they forecast a doubling of that number at least in the next 5 years. Data centers let you post those cute pictures of your cat on social media and make that next Amazon order. So it is now an essential thing to have this. A bunch of these data centers are located in Oregon, but an energy consultant, Robert Cromwell, told a hearing on Wednesday, either put up more generators, or we're going to see what the power industry calls rotating load shedding, where your lights and heat go out because the kilowatt cupboard is going to run bare. The idiots running our state are pushing for more electric homes, more electric cars, and get this, $250 million in tax breaks to bring in more data centers, all while they push to tear down hydroelectric dams. They continue to ban nuclear power and end even the clean natural gas generation with no clue what will replace it. They think they could replace it with offshore wind farms, but as we know, those are severely opposed because of their negative consequences, and they don't generate any electricity when the wind doesn't blow, and solar doesn't generate it when the sun doesn't shine. So be prepared for blackouts. This is something that the state is actually inflicting, along with the Biden administration's help, on us, and it will have real consequences. So get ready. Be ready for what can happen. A few last stories to share with you before we wrap up. There was a news story that I haven't had a chance to report and review in detail, but it says that the red-blue divide in Oregon between Republican-leaning areas and Democrat-leaning areas widened in this election. You can go see how your neighborhood voted, and you can also read this, and it will tell you where the margin for, say, Vice President Kamala Harris went up versus where Donald Trump won, and how that shifted from one place to another in the state. You can see how this affected other races in the state too, and some of the articles that are listed here in the Oregonian. So let me post this here. I recommend you share this with folks and learn about what's going on in our state. two last stories. I just had to share this one. Apparently, a Democrat lawmaker was arrested for a heinous attack upon a Republican opponent in West Virginia. Um, a there's a Democrat state representative who has threatened to kill 5 of his soon-to-be Republican colleagues, and he's a 61-year-old by the name of Joseph DeSoto, who threatened, among others, the Speaker of the House in West Virginia. And so he's been taken into custody and charged by the West Virginia State Police in Martinsburg on Thursday. And didn't disclose more additional details, but according to the criminal complaint that was seen by the local station WDVM, it was stated that Roger Hanshaw, the Republican Speaker of the House of West Virginia, was one of the individuals targeted. And you can check out the full story again on that republicbrief.com website. Let me post that here for you. And something, I guess, that I hope doesn't become more common, that Democrats lose their shit and start threatening the lives of Republicans. But we got to be ready for power outages, and we got to be ready for insane foaming at the mouth Democrats. Lastly, just to give you a heads up on something I expect to address here in the coming weeks, there is a 7-way battle for the Oregon State Republican Party chair position. The people running for this, several of them are familiar names in parts of the state who have been involved with statewide positions in politics, as well as county positions and other groups. Gabriel Bueller is the current chair of Washington County. Jerry Cummings is a pastor and a precinct committee person and alternate vice chair, I believe, for CD1. Ben Edel is a former candidate for office for state senate and founder of Free Oregon. Justin Huang is the current state chairman and a former candidate. Richard Jolly is with from Umatilla County and something called the Blue Mountain Alliance. Jo Rae Perkins, she's a perennial U.S. Senate candidate and House candidate, U.S. House candidate, and she's the current state Republican secretary who's decided to run for chair. Angelita Sanchez is the 7th person. She is the founder of Oregon's Timber Unity Movement, and she's a city councilor in a small town here in Oregon. And there's 3 candidates for vice chair: Michaela Hammerson, who I believe is from Douglas County, Lori Kimmel, I think Lynn County, and Connie Wexel, who's from, I think, Deschutes County. So there are candidates also for some of the other positions, though I don't think those were as competitive for secretary and for treasurer. Right now, I believe there's only 1 candidate each for those. So anyway, stay tuned on this. I'll see if I can't get some captive audiences planned and scheduled where we bring some of these folks on to talk about what their plans are. And yes, Ben Edel is one of them, Nicholas. I mentioned that. And so you can have a look at this. It's listed out in the Oregon Catalyst. And, you know, everybody has to answer some tough questions. It was not a successful year in Oregon for Republicans. Granted, there's a lot of factors that can affect that, including the presidential race. But when you compare Oregon to what happened in a lot of other blue states, Oregon took several steps backwards. And the question is worth asking, was the maximum done? In our state, were we effective and just had bad luck, or had a tide that ran against us? Or was there a lot more that could have been done? And could it have been done by the state Republican Party? And what is going to be done going forward? Because you can't fix what happened in the past, but you can address what's going to happen in the future. There's going to be a gubernatorial race against the incumbent Tina Kotek in 2026. There's these competitive congressional races. There's a state house and a state senate. It's all run by Democrats. It's all run by Democrats, which means that will somebody be holding them accountable? And will we have good candidates to counter them? And money and planning and resources and organization and messaging. And so take a look at this, follow that, and I'll see what I can do to maybe bring some of this information to you in the coming weeks. Because, even though not all of us get to vote on who these folks are, you can talk to the people who are supposed to represent you, who represent the different counties, and have a vote in this. I don't. I decided to retire from the 1st Congressional District and don't hold any elected voting position in the state Republican Party at this point. But I do have a lot of knowledge on this, and I think I can explain to you why it's important, and then hopefully ask some reasonable questions that will help everyone feel like they're more well-informed going forward. Anyway, that's tonight's show. I appreciate you taking the time to listen and to follow. And it's really important that you share this show with everyone you can, because people don't even know it exists. They don't know that there's somebody out here in Oregon who brings you this opinion, this news, all in one place in a tight, compact 45, 50-minute presentation, and is willing to say that he's not stupid enough to ignore the drones flying in the air, despite what the Biden administration says. So please tell everyone you can. And again, sorry if you didn't catch all this on Facebook, but I will post on Facebook a link on Twitter Twitter and on YouTube that will allow you to go back and see the beginning of the show. And yes, educate yourself on the Electoral College. You got some young people that have no idea what that is, because that's not something our education system even bothers to educate them, or sometimes they get misinformed on it and told that it's just a bad idea and that's it, and propaganda. And frankly, our country deserves more. Our founders deserve better. We deserve to learn the truth as to why this happened, and that'll help save our republic. We all have a job to do in that. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching, and have a great night. And tomorrow night should be Sunny and Dawn in the next episode of the Captive Audience. I hope to bring, like I said, these candidates for the statewide positions that I mentioned. I hope to have Ed Deal on. I hope to have Dave Huguenot on again before the end of the year or at the beginning of the next year, and bring you even more interesting perspectives going forward.